We all rely on our social connections in times of need. Our family, our friends, and our neighbors are important sources of economic and emotional support. We rely on these connections for things big and small. Perhaps for some last-minute childcare, or a small loan from a family member, or even just someone to listen to our frustrations and worries. Our social connections are there for us not only in emergencies, but also as an integral part of our daily lives. In South Sudan, where formal structures of governance are weak or non-existent, individuals depend on their social connections for everyday support, often more than they rely on external aid. These connections become increasingly important during times of crisis, when the need for food, shelter, and safety is more pronounced. When crisis erupts, households in South Sudan turn to local traders for loans, to their neighbors for protection and information, and to people who practice similar livelihoods for economic input or support. For aid actors, it's important to consider existing social connections when designing interventions and delivering assistance. In a crisis, humanitarian aid is important, but it can also have the unintended effect of disrupting underlying support structures. People who receive assistance may be alienated from their social connections based on the perception that they no longer need help. To better understand how social connections work, it's important to look at the different types of social connections that exist. Here, we talk about just two of many types. One of the most important types of social connections are those between individuals. These are connections between kin, those related by blood and by marriage, and non-kin, such as friends, neighbors, and acquaintances. Individuals and households share food, labor, and emotional support and guidance as a way of forming and maintaining these connections. The exchange of bride wealth during a marriage further helps to strengthen and diversify kinship connections. Traditionally, bride wealth is paid in cattle. After negotiations, the groom's family will make cattle payments to the bride's family. This includes not only parents, but also members of the bride's extended family. Exchanging bride wealth is not just a transaction, it solidifies strong and reciprocal social bonds between kinship networks. Another important type of social connection are those formed between individuals who share the same livelihood, like cattle keeping, fishing, and trading. These individuals often unite in informal livelihood groups, forming strong connections and offering each other critical support. In South Sudan, livelihood group members appoint leaders and adopt informal rules and norms. Group members are obligated to help each other by pooling assets or sharing food, cash, or advice. Members who break the rules may struggle to access support from their group members and can be expelled from the group altogether. During times of extended hardship and crisis, like food shortage, war, and economic collapse, social connections of all types are tested and strained, as individuals and families find that they have less resources to share with their connections, or that the number of connections they can rely on for support has decreased. In these hard times, households increasingly rely on external aid and often share this aid with their social connections to maintain these important forms of support. So how do we minimize disruptions to these important forms of sharing? Donors should layer short-term emergency funds with recovery efforts, so that when emergency funding ends, people can continue to maintain sharing and support. Aid actors should provide livelihood support through groups instead of individuals. This can help distribute aid resources more efficiently for a larger number of people. If we all understand the role and importance of social connections, we can work to ensure that interventions strengthen these important support structures and at the very least do not undermine them.